What's a privilege people don't realize they have? Story 1, a working set of legs. Several years ago, when I was in my early 20s, I was overweight and trying to get healthy by eating better and exercising. On one of my first runs, I was absolutely suffering to go even a quarter mile. While out of breath and feeling like garbage, an old man across the street from me yelled out, "Good morning! Gee, what I'd give to have a strong pair of legs like that again." I'm sure he was just being friendly, but he probably had no idea how much it impacted me. He completely changed my perspective from that point on about exercise and being healthy, while I had the privilege to do so. Story 2. Employment. Working sucks, but unemployment sucks more. It's super common in my country, UK, for people to talk about unemployed and disabled people, as if it's some cushy life to live off of welfare, and people just don't want to work. Not a single one of them would swap places. It causes very real long-term mental health issues to be long-term unemployed. It's up your life completely and often irreversibly. Relationships, social life, career, finances, etc. I just don't think enough people understand how badly it can harm you not to work. Story 3. The privilege of not having any food allergies and intolerances. Since I got diagnosed with celiac disease and have to eliminate gluten 100% or be in extreme pain, I learned so ridiculously many social things are food and/or drinks related. People won't understand how hard it can be without experiencing it themselves or see a loved one experience this. Story 4. Roof over your head, food in the cupboards, options of outfits to wear, etc. I'm a caseworker and work with a lot of homeless people, and it is heartbreakingly eye-opening. I used to complain about the ugly old carpet in my apartment, but I have been so very humbled. Story 5. Educated parents. Something I didn't realize was such a benefit in life until I was much older. I have dated people and had friends with parents who never went to college, and in those cases, the parents didn't really plan for their kids to go to college or push them towards it. Those people have been limited in their careers and incomes because of it. I am thankful my parents went to college and set the expectation that I would too. Student loans sucked, but my career potential has put me in a good spot in life. Story 6. Having parents who want the best for you. Even though some parents have no clue what they're doing, most parents have good intentions of wanting to grow up and do well. But I've been involved in the fostering system, and the truly reprehensible things I've had to hear about that some parents do to their kids still makes me nauseous, even though it was several years ago. Story 7. A family support system. I generally dislike framing it as a privilege because it's what everyone should have. It should be the default. But the presence of mom and dad as mentors, protectors, and role models is invaluable. People with good parents, please appreciate them. Give your mom or dad a call if you think they raised you well. Story 8. Skinny privilege. Not only are clothes designed for your frame, but people also treat you a lot better than they do fat folks. You're listened to when you go to the doctor. Asterisk. Doors are held open for you. Asterisk. People don't roll their eyes when you're talking. The list goes on. You get the point. You can have a butterface and still be treated with far more kindness than people of the larger persuasion. Story 9. A house, a bed, electricity, food. I could go on. As someone who was made homeless at a young age, I learned quickly what it's like to go without basic things. Most people take these things for granted, but there are millions of people out there who aren't privileged enough to have them. Story 10. No major health problems. I'm about a month into recovering from a fall that necessitated a full hip replacement surgery. 10/10 would not recommend. I'm actually doing pretty well, walking with a cane now and finally able to live on my own without help, but getting here was a challenge. I've still got a month of physical therapy until I'm cleared to go back to work, and don't even get me started on the cost of this whole experience. Take care of yourself, folks. Story 11. Being able to do things for yourself. Walk to the toilet so you can wee, make yourself dinner, get a drink of water, cook your food in the way you like it cooked. Being able to go outside whenever you want. Having control over what you put into your body. Being pain-free. Being able to exercise whenever you want. Having people who can support you. Story 12. Still having people who raised you alive into adulthood and being able to visit your childhood home. Almost all of my family have died in the past 5 years. It's been devastating, and it really feels like my childhood has well and fully died. I feel so young for it to have happened. Story 13. Youth. When I was a young man, I had liberty, but I did not see it. I had time, but I did not know it. And I had love, but I did not feel it. Many decades would pass before I understood the meaning of all three. And now, the twilight of my life, this understanding has passed into contentment. Love, liberty, and time, once so disposable, are the fuels that drive me forward. And love, most especially, mio caro, Ezio Auditore, Assassin's Creed Revelations. Story 14. Having parents who are financially literate. My wife's family isn't crazy wealthy or anything, but they taught her about how to save, how to invest with CDs and bonds, how to have good credit, and when to be frugal, and when to splurge for the best quality. My parents, on the other hand, didn't let me make me a bank account until I was 16 or 17, never had any real talks with me about money beyond don't get a credit card, and taught me to always buy the cheapest version of anything, no matter what. Shockingly, she was much better off than I was when we met, and had to teach me so much about managing money. Thankfully, I hadn't managed to get myself into too much debt at that point, and with her help, educational, not financial, we didn't share money until we were married. I paid off almost all my debt before we even got married. Without her, I'd probably be absolutely destitute. Story 15. Being skinny. I can only speak from the perspective of America, but someone who is born naturally thin and has to do little to maintain it will go through so much less torture than someone who's overweight. The amount of misinformation there is about the relationship between health and weight is astounding. On top of that, diet culture, think fad diets, glamorized eating disorder behavior, etc., is pushed down everyone's throats from the time they're born. I think a lot of people don't realize that being overweight is not a thing most being can just stop at any given time. Medical complications, specific lifestyles, physical restrictions, economic restrictions, just to name a few. So if you're unfortunate enough to be overweight in this society, you now have to deal with consistent rude comments from other people. Subtle and not so subtle messages in almost all media about how being fat is bad, never being able to find your size in clothing stores, being discriminated against in doctors' offices, an inner struggle between what is true and what is not, and a constant fight for self-love despite what society is telling you. Story 16. Having money. And I'm not talking about being wealthy, I mean just not being dirt poor. I have friends who think they relate to me. They'll be like, yeah, I'm so broke too, but be getting Botox and lip injections. I'm like, girl, we are not the same kind of poor. There's a difference between being inconvenienced by sag a flat tire and having a literal panic attack because you have no way to replace it. Story 17. The privilege of believing privilege does not exist. I, a BW, literally was within feet of 3 white people in Alaska discussing this, all saying it's a made-up concept. I was astonished, and not one person thought to even ask me, someone without the privilege of white skin or a penis. Imagine being so oblivious to the struggles of various groups of people as to genuinely believe such a thing. Wow. Story 18. Insurance that covers dental, vision, and hearing. These are not considered necessary rights in my state. I am allowed 1 emergency dental visit if I have pain in a tooth. They will not do a filling or anything other than pulling the tooth. I have to pay for my own glasses, so I only get a new pair every 3-5 years. I need hearing aids but can't afford them. I understand this likely varies by state. I'm also only allowed 10 therapy sessions per year. Story 19. People who value you when they don't need something from you. I say people because I wish it was anyone who would. The random cashier who really is kind often makes me cry. Mind you, I'm a teacher of kids with the highest support needs. The other night out with a friend, his coaster came up with his drink, and I immediately put it down and salted it so it wouldn't happen again. I then realized this happens to me a lot, and I never once thought to do it for myself. Story 20. As a straight white dude, I obviously have a lot of privileges. One I have been thinking about lately is just the fact that how I live my life isn't politicized. For example, I am in favor of gay marriage, but I realize that even having all these debates and discussions on the issue implies that we ought to have a say in such things. In reality, it's not our place to be involved. We have no right to tell anyone else how to live, so our opinions on those things should not be a factor. So for now, I'll continue to advocate for what's right until it's well settled that everyone has equal rights. After that, I'll do what everyone else did when I got married. Mind my own business. TLDR. It's a privilege not having the way you live your life discussed, debated, argued, and politicized. Story 21. Reading. All of these I realize that 99% of the answers are not privilege, is just basic human rights and normalcy. If you don't have your full health, get paid fairly for your work, and all the other stuff doesn't mean someone who has them is privileged. It simply means you were treated unfairly, have a load of bad luck, or life decided to you. Is awful is not right. And I hope nobody makes fun of you for that, or thinks or treats you less cause of that. You can hate me for this, but I feel as if when people say something stupid is a privilege is almost hateful, like whoever has something they don't have, don't deserve it, or didn't work for it, or are simply not worthy. Let me remind you that jealousy is okay, but don't project. Here is an example. Privilege is being born rich and not having to work a day in your life. It is not privilege to working your ass off, making sacrifices to be able to earn good money. And even if others do all of that and still don't make it, it is still not a privilege. Story 22. Hosting. My boyfriend and I were just talking about this. Many people in our age group, 30s, 40s, do not host dinner parties the way our parents, grandparents did. Why? Because a lot of us do not have homes. A lot of adults are living in apartments without roommates, or they are living with family. It's much more difficult to host in those situations. Hosting is becoming a lost art in a lot of ways, but how can people host if they don't have homes? Story 23, money or gifts, house down payment, car, from parents' family when starting out in your late teens, early 20s. It might not seem like much, but not having to make car loan payments or PMI or high interest on credit cards makes a huge difference. Also, being supported by family, rent payments, credit card that gets paid, helps you start out with less debt. It takes forever to climb out of early debt, and the most expensive thing is being poor. Having to use credit cards for emergencies, higher interest loans, etc., puts the brakes on savings and investments. Story 24, being able to see loved ones more often than not. The people that are actually gems in our life and being able to speak to them, see them over the years and be able to spend time together with, not everyone can say that. Sometimes people in our lives pass away so early. Cherish the good people in life. Wishing y'all have more time with loved ones, including pets, etc. Story 25. Being able to have an amazing bond with their pets. They have limited years sometimes, but they not only mean so much to us, but we tend to mean so much to them when they're taken care of, loved, etc. Cherishing our pets and having them in our lives is absolutely underrated. Always grateful for that. Story 26. A toilet that I can sit on, that flushes to somewhere far away so that I don't have to see or smell it again, that the toilet is within 4 walls for privacy, has a door that locks, has a handy dispenser nearby that supplies toilet paper for wiping. And on top of all of that, I have electricity within these 4 walls that provides lighting so that I don't fall in the toilet when dumbass fails to put the lid, another added bonus, down in the middle of the night. And that electricity also supplies heat to keep me warm while I sit on said toilet midwinter. All joking aside, I really do recognize just how privileged I am even to have a bathroom, let alone a home that houses this bathroom. Story 27. Something I didn't get growing up was me being able /allowed/ not scared to walk around my home reserve at all hours of the night. My little sister asks me for a ride to take her to her BF's place halfway across the reserve at 10 p.m. And I'm like, why don't you just walk? I used to walk all over before I got a car. I'd end up driving them around a lot, but just griped a bit. Wasn't till a bit later when I realized my little sisters can't just walk around like I did because they're afraid. Then I got angry that my little sisters lived in a world where they can't walk around leisurely like I did because they were afraid of their lives. Story 28. Strictly speaking, where I'm living, just general safety. You don't have to worry about getting stabbed or shot. Your medical bills won't bankrupt you. We get our news through a public state-owned format, so there's less chance at political or other sinister spins. And we have very few people living in poverty compared to other countries. But people still find a way to blame what little inconveniences they have on immigrants, so they vote for extreme right-wing parties. Story 29. Being accepted by society. Growing up, I always wondered why the other kids were able to make friends so easily when they would reject me. As I got older, it got harder and harder. By the age of 11, I thought that something was wrong with me, that I was just some broken, malfunctioning kid. Then at the age of 17, I got diagnosed as autistic. I don't care much about what other people think of me anymore, because I know they're just going to hate me for who I am anyways, which kind of sucks, but I guess you get used to it enough. Story 30. Being able to eat whatever they want / choose what you want to eat. This isn't from the financial perspective, but the medical one. Now that I'm older, I know so many people who either have food allergies or bad reactions to certain foods, so they have to cut foods out of their diet or be on specific health plans to stay healthy. They can't imagine just going to any restaurant or buying food without knowing the ingredients first or reading the menu in advance. Story 31. Having a safety net. Wealthy parents or family members they can call if life gets rough and they can't make ends meet. I live in a town full of people with well-off parents and they're just able to live differently than I am. Less stress, nicer vehicles, nice expensive homes that have been passed down, cushy jobs, can afford to have huge families, lake homes, own businesses, etc. Story 32. When I feel like going shopping, I can do it with absolutely no fear of being robbed, detained by cops, harassed by political overseers, or being followed by security in stores. Being an older white man in casual and almost shoddy clothing, I am pretty much invisible. My disability is not visible, so my slow pace is just attributed to my age, if noticed at all. Story 33. A good bed to sleep in, running water, food, a roof over your head, access to doctors and medicine, loving parents, both parents, having heat/AC. All the things we need as humans to survive and protect ourselves is a privilege, unfortunately. Things that used to be considered a human right is now being treated as privilege or luxury. Story 34. I work a 3-minute drive up the street doing a job suited to my experience. I walk to work every morning without crossing a single street. On the other side is a grocery store. I live out my entire daily routine on the same block in an area where people usually spend all of their time in their cars. It's a privilege we all could share, but people don't realize it. I save so much money, time, and energy. Story 35. The ability to tune out certain problems because they don't personally affect you. Whether it's feeling safe walking alone at night, never worrying about accessibility, or not having to justify your identity, many privileges go unnoticed simply because they're not daily struggles for those who have them. Story 36. If you have food in your fridge, clothes on your back, a roof over your head, and a place to sleep, you are richer than 75% of the world. If you have money in your bank, your wallet, and some spare change, you are among 8% of the world's wealthy. If you woke up this morning with more health than illness, you are more blessed than the million people who will not survive this week. If you have never experienced the danger of battle, the agony of imprisonment or torture, or the horrible pangs of starvation, you are luckier than 500 million people alive and suffering. If you can read this message, you are more fortunate than 3 billion people in the world who cannot read at all. Story 37. Having family or loved ones. Even just one person. So many people don't have anyone else they can rely on for anything. I don't know what that feels like, and I'm scared to ever know. When everything else falls apart, I know I still have them. I wish a lot of people with bigger families wouldn't take that for granted. It's worth more than any amount of money or things. Story 38. Being able to shop sustainably better. There's a lot of concern for climate change, rightly so, both on an individual level and a corporate celebrity level. I'm a uni student, but I'm lucky enough to have money to support me. I try and make good choices when I can. It's a privilege that I have the time and the money to buy most of my food at a local market. It's a privilege that I have the free time to learn recipes and cook fresh. It's a privilege to have an expensive water bottle rather than buying plastic ones every day. It's a privilege to buy my clothes, jewelry from smaller women-led businesses. It's a privilege to be able to care about business practices, supporting local businesses, being able to spend slightly more and choose where to shop rather than having to go to the cheapest option. It's a privilege to both have the money and be educated enough to be conscious about where and to who your money goes. It's something I think is often missed in the sustainability discussion. A lot of people do not have either the education, the time, or the money to be able to make choices that are better for the environment/communities. Story 39. The ability to pursue fulfillment. We in developed countries feel entitled that we deserve fulfillment in our work or hobbies. Most of this world you become an adult. That late if lucky, find a way to earn money, no matter how much it aligns with what you're good at. You don't get these choices to try different careers and experiences throughout life that a lot of us do. Story 40. Having a home, a shelter, is very taken for granted these days. Cost of living just keeps rising and rising. I'm so thankful to have a place at all. For many years, I've just always known that any minute something could go wrong and I'd be homeless instantly. Meanwhile, kids on TikTok show off their multiple mansions and getaway resorts. I'm thankful for my peasant life. Story 41. Help with raising kids. Free, short-notice occasional childcare must be amazing. My wife and I moved to a different part of the country away from family, and there were times that were awful. Wife at work, one or both kids sick, both under 4, and being sick myself. Trying to keep an eye on one kid while crouched over the toilet with the other, while you're vomiting into the trash can all at the same time is worse than you can imagine. Story 42. Clean running water, enough food to eat, a working shower, a flushing toilet, not getting wet when it rains, having a washing machine, having Wi-Fi in your house. My husband and me don't have these privileges. I didn't even know these are privileges. I thought it's normal to have all these things. Man, were I wrong. Story 43. The privilege of wasting resources, like setting AC temperature super low, keeping light all night on in office no matter if there's people inside, HOA not allowing people use natural sunshine to dry clothes off, but has to use a dryer, overuse of plastics for everything. I do not want to be offensive as I'm getting used to these privileges easily after moving to US, so self-reflection is needed. Story 44. Being able to learn in the way your educational system wants you to. I grew up gifted and always did well in school, but I realized later it mostly meant that my brain can perform in a certain way, and that was rewarded and given opportunities and advantages in life that equally smart or smarter folks than me that don't learn in that particular way weren't. Story 45. Parents that are safety nets but don't coddle and encourage independence. I am free to make my own mistakes and learn from them, work to bail myself out if I can. If not, they will sweep in. But the best part is they make me work to get out of it myself. asking questions and challenging my thinking so I can work it out myself. And they are not disappointed or angry when they need to help. They do it without even thinking. Story 46. A brain not affected by trauma. As someone living with CPTSD, every day is a game of chess. Am I reacting normally, or is it trauma driving this reaction? Being able to sense the feelings of every person in the room, not knowing if your parenting is going to traumatize your own kids, it's exhausting. Story 47. American citizenship. As much as I loathe so much about the state of my country right now, I've known too many immigrants to take what I have for granted. People risk their lives and sacrifice everything they have for something I was given as an accident of birth. Story 48. The wide open opportunity we have to be successful, whatever that means to you. Family, friends, marriage, money, adventure. Too many people waste time wishing they had what someone else has, or just don't take the effort to visualize what they want. I see people moaning about not having money or success, but they waste their time on fun things that does nothing to advance their life. Hours of gaming, going clubbing, drinking, etc., all of which leads to being lethargic, underperform at work, no side hustle, etc. Make fun of me as a boomer. But in 30, 40 years when the 30s kids hit retirement age, they are going to be whining they do not have enough to retire or have to keep working. There is no excuse. Look at the thousands born into poverty and very little support, but become very successful. Our scrolling and clicking mentality has resulted in a laziness that is not going to play out well for most. Story 49. Having a good relationship with your parents as adults. I'm married with my own kids, but there is still family dinner once a week. We do holidays with my parents. They help with the kids. And my mom and I most days have a daily yip-yap. Not everyone has that, and I try to remember it's special. Story 50. I didn't know how lucky I was, and still am, until things I took for granted started to disappear. Growing up, I was well-liked, very intelligent, and expected a bright future for myself. Things just kind of came easily, and I didn't really have a concept of what it meant to work hard. When I was a teenager, I started to get very sick. My body was fine back then, but my mind was not. My family started to fall apart, and I felt very alone in my suffering. I got into the college of my choice without even wanting to go. I tried and failed to graduate many times over the years. I've had to accept that a degree probably isn't in the cards for me. Instead, I spent about a decade being hospitalized or in some form of mental health treatment around 30 times or so. I've lost track. I am 29, turning 30 on Valentine's Day this year. Recently, the spinal issues that have been bugging me for a few years became a massive issue, and I have to use a walker to get around my home. My family has to stop by to take care of me, but I'm hoping that with a wheelchair I might gain a bit of independence and be in less pain. Growing up, I was told how much potential I had, how I could be anything I wanted. I've spent a long time trying to come to terms with the fact that my life will never be what I was promised, and that many of the things I loved, I may never get to do again. I was an athlete, a musician, an academic, etc. I had so many opportunities to succeed that I hardly knew what to spend my life doing. Instead of any of those things, I survive on an SSI paycheck of a little over $9,000 a year, and my future seems uncertain and sometimes scary to think about. But here's the thing. Losing so much taught me to be incredibly grateful for the small things. I used to measure my self-worth in accomplishments. Now I'm just glad I get to wake up in the morning. I was able to shower on my own using a shower chair yesterday, and that was super awesome. I spend quite a bit of time in bed right now, but I get to look outside my window at the mountains and look forward to getting outside again. I'm surrounded by people who love me, friends and family, and who have stuck by me through this show that has been the last 16-ish years. I'm thinking about trying to continue the series I've been writing soon, which should be a nice way to pass the time. My body sucks, but my mental health is actually pretty decent. I have hard days, but I have the knowledge now to know how to get through them and to be sure that someday they will pass. This is not the life I thought I would live. I fully expected to be somebody in the world, to have a name that people would just kind of know. But it turns out that just kind of being some random person in my rural town suits me a lot better. The people who know me like me and are kind to me. Not putting pressure on myself to be a success story has helped me be at peace with the person I grew up to be. And it's also helped me to realize that in my own small way, I am a success story because I'm still here. I can't walk well. My brain is a mystery to every doctor I've met, and I'm worried about my future. But I never expected to make it to 30 years old. I was so sure I would kill myself long before I got here. If I needed to lose just about everything I used to identity myself with in order to learn how to be grateful and love myself for the deeply flawed NPC I am, I do think it was worth it. Story 51. Old-fashioned self-insured company insurance. My American company covered all but $3,200 of my death cardiac arrest, and I'm now paying $3,300 a year for my life-saving meds. This cost me about $1,200 a year. Sidebar. This company didn't pay for my personal defibrillator, and I ended up paying $3,000 for that. But that's not where near the horror stories I've seen online. Feel free to hate me over this, but I didn't realize what a privilege this was until I started reading about other insurance companies. Story 52. I work in emergency services. Yes, I did choose this. I'm honestly not complaining though. But I do sometimes miss my innocence that I had before this. Life kind of feels a bit more heavier now, but I still do enjoy my job and will never change it. But I started when I was only 19. I was a teenager. And then next minute, I was helping move dead bodies and doing resuscitation on people, and then having to tell their family that their person is dead like I missed the me before that sometimes. Story 53. Dexterity in hands, if applicable. For example, for COVID safety reasons, I was trying to not touch traffic light call buttons with my hands, so using elbows, etc. The buttons are fairly small and designed in such a way that they cannot be pressed with elbows, etc. Now imagine if I couldn't use my hands at all to do this. It may seem minor in the scheme of things, but demonstrates a lack of consideration for disabilities in the design of public spaces. Story 54. The comfort of belonging, seeming to have things in common with your neighbors and coworkers, and a supportive job that will give you some leeway to live your life and a little empathy when your life has challenges. My friends who seem the most okay have these things in spades. Story 55. People who live without constant anxiety are truly blessed. I wonder what it's like. I've lived with anxiety since I was a little girl and only recently figured out why. I'm 46 and have lived with undiagnosed severe ADHD my entire life. With that comes with constant judgment about just being who I am, and it's caused me to become this ball of anxiety. Everything I do comes with this constant worry that I am doing it wrong. Every interaction, every job, every situation, every decision. It's all the time. All because I was judged for everything as a kid because of how I behaved. It sucks. Story 56, the privilege of opportunity. I grew up in poverty. I had the opportunity to go to uni. I got my undergrad and spent a year applying for anything and everything related to the area I wanted to work in. I had my CV professionally done. I consulted with HR experts. No dice. That was fine as I was still doing postgrad, spent more time applying. Nada. Then, an Instagram ad popped up on my feed, advertising a graduate program that would essentially guarantee a pathway to get me where I wanted to go. The recruitment process took 6 months, and I eventually got in. It was a career, hell, life-making opportunity. After I got in, friends and family congratulated me. They told me how much I deserved it, how I worked so hard, blah, blah. And while that was true, I also could have not gotten in and been just another one of the countless people with a humanities degree who do sweet FA with it. I had the opportunity to work hard. I had the opportunity to apply for and particulate in the graduate program. There was never any guarantee that I'd crack the industry I'm in, and no amount of hard work will guarantee you'll make it. Hard work is nothing without opportunity and luck. Story 57. To have connections to other people, be it family or friends that are like family, especially as one gets older, but to be okay on one's own too. To not be lonely. That was the biggest adjustment. And to have basic needs met financially in the senior years. So many seniors go without and would never say a word to friends or family. Story 58. Running filtered water is obviously a big one, but consider the other side of that utility. My mother has worked in water reclamation for my entire 30 years of living. You don't know how beautiful the world has it due to people that take care of what goes down our toilets and drains. Story 59. Clean air, clean water, warm water throughout the year. Trash pickup by others. More than enough food to get overweight, school bus, free lunch for school kids, Medicare, Medicaid, ER visits without having to pay before being seen, free ER visits and hospital stays if no money to pay, cussing any politicians you don't like without any consequences, burning your flags without any consequences, protesting and even rioting and getting knelt down by some politicians, killing innocent people with no death penalty, committing crimes and getting everything for free, a life sentence for free housing, food, and medical care. I can list more. Story 60. Turning on a faucet and having clean, safe drinking water everywhere we go, including in our own homes. This is something that did not exist for the vast majority of human history. Aside from the convenience of indoor plumbing, i.e. not having to go fetch heavy-ass water every single day, there is also the fact that almost every person who ever walked the earth lived a life where they could be laid low at any moment by a waterborne disease. They did their best to filter and treat their drinking water, or even turn to weak 2% beer, that was high enough alcohol content to be safe, but not strong enough to be a diuretic. Sometimes, despite their best efforts, our ancestors ended up drinking contaminated water and dying a horrific death. Sometimes entire families and communities died together. So yeah, next time you are having a bad day, go turn on a faucet, drink some of that water, and think about how amazing it is that you can do that. There are billions of people alive today who can't. Story 61, a paying job. Forget about how much you make, the amount is subjective. The fact that a company took the risk of hiring you and willing to pay you for your labor, the opposite of this is obviously unemployment. If you have no incoming cash flows, how are you going to get your next meal? Where are you going to rest your head? How are you going to be on Reddit if you have no phone, data, internet source? Life itself is a privilege. Waste not what you have. Story 62. In university, I saw so many classmates piss away their education that was paid for with no regard to how amazing it was that they could. I worked 2 on-campus jobs, one of them serving food to these people, and for scholarships, and still came away with heavy debt. Story 63. Living in today's age. This applies to pretty much everyone alive right now. With everything going on, it might be easy to forget that this is still one of the best periods for an average person to be alive in the history of humankind. Everyone is lucky. Just a few centuries ago, most people simply didn't make it past 40, and like 1/3 of all people died before they reached adulthood. Story 64. In my early 20s, I didn't realize how privileged I was to be able to ask my parents for money, even just the occasional $20.50 for groceries. My family wasn't wealthy, so I didn't think of myself as privileged, but even just having a little to send to your kids for necessities is something a lot of people don't have. Story 65. Not needing to worry about violence too much or constantly or possibly at all. I have it these days, but I also know that not everyone even around me unfortunately get to enjoy it, at least not at levels as I do. Oh, well, time to go to middle-of-night dog walk into suburb and feel zero risk of having to worry about violence. I hope this, among many other things in this thread, for everyone. Story 66. The ability to afford a car or have access to decent public transportation. My last car died over a year ago and I couldn't afford another one, still can't. Thankfully, I live in a city with decent public transportation and biking infrastructure, so I have no problem getting around. If I lived in a car-dependent area, I'd be screwed. Story 67. Having all healthcare free for more than a lifetime. Nobody, except in third-world countries, remembers when healthcare cost money personally, rather than through general tax. I'm not sure whether this is true, but in my country, I think people sometimes chose less well-paid jobs because the company paid for their healthcare. Story 68. I was without power for 10 days because of Hurricane Helene, and it was a massive wake-up call for me. Electricity, running water, a house that's standing, a car that thankfully had no damage, everything. I complain a lot less now. My washing machine had an issue shortly after the power came back. I fixed it with no complaints. It did get a ton of water on the floor, but I mopped it up and the problem was relatively easy to fix. Story 69. Eating. My boyfriend told me he was stopped by someone asking for food while he was getting off the train after work a couple days ago. All he had was a bag of carrots and the guy nearly cried when my boyfriend gave them to him. He saw how hungry the guy was and gave him a $10 bill to get something hot. It was frigid that day. My boyfriend came home to a warm shower and hot soup, while that guy had to wander the cold begging for food because he hadn't eaten in 2 days. Story 70. Walk in a regular store and buy your kids some shoes when they need shoes. And on this matter, it's really weird to me that how there can be so many kids' expensive brand stores where a single piece of tiny clothing can cost €50. Like, do they really have that many customers that all of those can keep up stores? Story 71. Growing up rich is so relative that very few people actually believe they grew up rich. I've known people whose parents have 8-digit net worths who don't think they were rich because the other people they grew up around were in similar situations. Story 72. A functional bathroom. My relatives didn't even have a tank for water, just a bowl, no seat, no water tank, and an outhouse to shower with just a drum of water and taboo. You had to use rainwater or seawater 10M walk just to have water to pour into the toilet bowl for flushing. We did provide dollar to help them build a more comfortable home, and for them to buy a business for self-sufficiency before we visited, but damn, they wasted the money on other stuff. Came back home and felt bad but conflicted with the situation. Story 73. I moved from Europe to the States when I hear my mom talking how she doesn't want to see a doctor with her 240/150ths high blood pressure because she needs to wait 20 minutes and she doesn't have the time, even though she doesn't need to pay a dime for a doctor visit compared to here. I'm losing it. Story 74. Being able to read before bed, my eyes are really messed up. Glasses are useless in correcting my vision. The only thing that works is a set of specialized contacts, but you can't wear those to sleep, so once they're out, you just have to commit to not being able to see. I miss reading books at night before bed. I miss being able to sketch before sleeping without having to set an alarm. Story 75. If they have a strong right arm and got to go to grade school. I had a childhood injury and a homeschool father with a temper who was abused as a child. Snapping tricep syndrome is no joke. Got a bad surgery from the doctor who did it free and only $10K to the hospital. Never going to work right. If you have a strong right arm, be happy for that. Story 76. Reading and writing. At our kids' school, very deprived area, the literacy rate among parents is shockingly low, and staff are currently trying to get parents to come in and read with their little kids so as to learn alongside them. It honestly never occurred to me till I found that out, that in this day and age in the UK, there'd be a sizable percentage of people who never learned to read. Story 77, family. There's a clear difference in the support a person has. Family give you food and a bed because they care. They send people money in jail. They have a link of supports that won't let them suffer. Ref. Currently homeless and reflecting on a life of neglect leading to this. People think I'm some typical young guy complaining about their parents. Growing up with neglect and domestic violence really breaks the magic romantic connection with so-called family. To those who are given a bed and meals by someone who loves you, see what life is like without that. Story 78, pain medications and antibiotics. My hubby has a condition called SJS-TENS, so he can't take the majority of medications. He had to have a wisdom tooth pulled and was able to have some during the procedure, but nothing afterward. If he ever gets any infections, he pretty much can only take Cipro. So if he got something resistant, it would kill him. Story 79. Drinkable, both quality and flavor, tap water. Billions around the world don't have safe drinking water on tap, and even Europe is awash in bottled water, homes, restaurants, because, I don't know, really. Weird flavor? Drinking water in the US is generally safe and doesn't taste terrible. There are some exceptions to the taste angle. Oh, and water fountains in airports. My experience with European airports is that there are few, if any, water fountains. It's bottled water from stores or vending machines. Story 80. Being able to breathe without having to think about it or needing any kind of aid. I know as a kid that I used to think it was just really cool that bodies would breathe on their own and we didn't even have to think about it. Then I got older and I found out just how many conditions mean that people don't have that luxury. So every now and then when I'm really down, I just take a deep breath and focus on the fact that despite all the things my body does not do correctly, that is one thing I'm lucky enough to have. Story 81, posting on social media and internet forums. I've been a moderator on several forums and a couple of subs. One thing I can tell you is that it's absolutely wild how many people think that posting on social media and internet forums is their constitutional right. It is not. It is a privilege, and that privilege can be revoked at any time for any reason. Forums have this thing called a terms of service that most people don't read, and they don't understand the rules either. Seriously, read the rules before you post. Story 82. Thin privilege of being able to shop for high-quality, longer-lasting fashion pieces. I've been reading about creating personal style, avoiding fast fashion and mini trend cycles. Lots of people write about the value of investing in quality pieces, but when you're plus-size, higher-name brands, don't make items in your size. I'm stuck in fast fashion because they are the only companies that make clothes my size. Story 83. That video games can be finished being made, distributed, bought, and played, but then still updated with patches, content, and features long after release. You technically hold more than a little sway in making that happen through direct lines to developers on social media and feedback forums/online forums. It was only 20-ish years ago that what you bought on a disc was it. No patches, no real updates, no communication or relationship between player and developer. Story 84. Being straight, being white, not being Jewish or Muslim, being tall. If you're a young guy dating, not balding. If you're female, being above average in attractiveness. Having a fallback system if things don't go well when you're right out of college. Going to college without student loans. These are mainly middle-class privileges, but they are privileges.